Class of 2022, I'm your Vice President, Charlie Robinette, and I have the honor of introducing tonight's lecturer. Being from a rural town in western North Carolina, I'd only ever met one alumnus from UNC prior to coming here. Yet somehow I still knew that God's favorite color was Carolina blue. Neither of my parents kept up with college sports, and outside of going to the Outer Banks once in middle school, I'd never even been to this half of the state. Nevertheless, I still knew that UNC stood for the University of National Champions. See, even though I only knew one individual who graduated from this university, I knew countless people who took pride in this school, what it has to offer, and what it represents. Those people weren't proud of a diploma. They were proud of a t-shirt that bore witness to a basketball season that got them through a hard year. They were proud of a license plate that boasts an old well that they've never drank from, but that they know represents the effort that precedes success. I'm sure this is of no surprise to anyone here, but for the rest of our lives, we will not only represent the University of North Carolina, but the University of North Carolina also reflects us. The last lecture during senior week is traditionally given by a faculty member who has deeply impacted students, whose words and actions have impressed upon us in such a way that we are changed for the better after having heard from them. When deciding who best to deliver such a significant lecture at such a memorable time in our lives, we put a lot of thought into who could speak best to the monumentality of this change that lies ahead. Someone who knows what it's like to have brought talent, skill, and ambition to Chapel Hill, to nurture those things in hopes that they would grow to become even greater, and then take them out into the world to share the fruit of this great university. My fellow seniors, a man that knows his fair share about transition, Coach Roy Williams.
Is everybody warm enough? I told Wanda, my wife is sitting over here, wave, honey, thank you. She's really good. She does exactly what I say. Can you wave again? See, I told you. We both graduated from here, and the sad news to tell you is that I guess next weekend or the following weekend graduation, 50th year reunion, 50 years. That's hard for me to freaking understand. So I will ask something I always tell coaches or speakers to not do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Can you guys in the back hear okay? Okay. The reason I asked that, because a guy at a clinic I was doing one time, the speaker before me said, can you guys in the back hear? And they yelled no, and everybody in the front moved to the back. So I've always been afraid to ask that question a little bit. But one thing that I would like to tell you that Wanda and I were standing over here, and I looked around, and it's brought back to memories. My first meeting ever in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We came here as freshmen in the fall of 1968. Exactly, classes started, truthfully, on Friday the 13th, 1968. But Tommy Bello was the school president, and he told us something in Memorial Hall, a freshman class, and he came in and said, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Now, you got to realize, we're talking a long time ago, okay? He said, Chapel Hill, North Carolina is the greatest place in the world. For you guys out there, you can walk down the street of Chapel Hill with a girlfriend on your arm and a blanket over your shoulder, and nobody think a thing in the world about it. And I thought that was pretty neat. There was no visitation. Wanda lived in Cobb Dorm. And I would pull up out back at Cobb Dorm and walk inside and get the phone and call up to the room and tell her that I was here, and so she would come down and meet me. So things have changed quite a bit from what it was in 1968. But I do think that this is a marvelous place. I did not have any idea when I came to North Carolina what it was going to do for me. I just remember, and I told the senior class at graduation last year, we had graduation for 2020 and 21, I guess, because they missed it, but it was a great time. And I remember telling those guys, and again, I'm from the South, so if I say guys, that means boys and girls too, okay? But I was telling those that what you do when you come here is your own stuff. You do your own thing. Chapel Hill, North Carolina, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is a place that when I was here, it was a very turbulent time. There were protests going on. Kent State had happened. We had the social work, the campus workers. There wasn't a great deal of diversity in our campus, and it was difficult times. If you wanted to carry around a sign and protest, you could do that. If you wanted to go to the library every night and study, you could do that. If you wanted to go to the gym every night, which is where I went, you could do that. But there's always people there to do it with, and I thought that was one of the greatest things about Chapel Hill. You never had to feel like you were alone, and I thought that was fantastic. For me, standing here doing the last lecture, the biggest question I've had to ask the last couple of days is, who is this for? This last lecture idea. Is it for me? Because I didn't know last year, a year and 3 weeks ago, whenever, I didn't know that loss to Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament was not going to be, I didn't know it was going to be the last game I ever coached. I don't think I would have done anything differently, except I probably would have been even more emotional after the game. People asked me several times last year if there was any significance after we beat Duke at home, one of only 2 games that you guys got to come see at all. We had 3,000 fans is all we could be. Because as I left the court after we had all this team stand and wave and thank the fans and the seniors, I kneeled down and I kissed the floor. And people asked if that meant anything. And it really didn't at that time. What it meant was that we had fans, we had students in the stands. And that was only the second game that we had in the season of 2021, that we had people in the stands. And I always thought that Smith Center was a great home court advantage. And we beat Duke that day, and I liked that. And I decided to just kneel down and I kissed the floor in the Smith Center because I knew what that home court meant to me, and I knew what the home court meant to you guys when you guys had a chance to come to the games. And so that was something that was great. And if I'm thinking of the last lecture as if it's for me, I have to think about everyone who's cared about me my entire life. My family, of course, my loved ones, the players, the fans, the students, and even my bosses. But I didn't have any idea that it was my last game. I knew that I was disappointed in myself the last 2 years that I coached. And people, particularly my friends, were really, at first, really almost in a frenzy, wondering if I was sick or anything. And I told them that I was not. It was just that I didn't think I was doing it as well as I had done it before. And I knew I could not cheat my players, and I could not cheat my school. And so when I made that decision, then the only thing I wanted to do is make darn sure that I could have a say in who the next guy was going to be, because this was my freaking school. And I cared about it. I cared about the basketball program more than anybody that has ever lived. And so I don't think that the last lecture sort of fits in, because, I do have 12 insomnia cookies that I'll probably try to eat tonight. That's my payment. But other than I'll give 1 to 1, so I'll take 11. I don't think I'm going to drop dead after I walk off here, but if I do, I hope I'll give you the best shot I've got while we're here. All right, so if it's for you, the last lecture, that's sort of the way I look at it, because I do enjoy coming to the games. I'm more nervous now than I've ever been at a basketball game. I was never nervous in my life. Coached 33 years as a head coach, and I was never nervous in a game my entire life. But I was nervous this year. The funniest thing is I always told people I would never look at the score during the first half. Because if we play great defense and the guy shoots a bad shot and it banks in at the horn at the end of the shot clock, we did a great job defensively, but it looked up on the score that gave him 3 points. Or if we did a great job offensively and we moved it around and threw a nice set play in there and we threw it up and the guy caught it and dunked it and banged it off the back of the rim, we did everything except make the shot, but we didn't get any points. So in the first half, I would never look at the score. I would always look at the baskets, and we had the timer up there on the top of both baskets, so I would know how much time was left. And at halftime, I would go to the locker room, and I would look up and look at the score at that time. And that was the first time that I would ever know what the score of the game was. And the reason I did that, because I wanted to make decisions on how we were playing by my knowledge of the game and my knowledge of what we were trying to do. not just to score. Now, at the end of the game, I had to watch the score a little bit because of time and score situations, but it was something that for me, I didn't feel like I wanted anything other than my own opinion about how we were playing. I was never nervous. This year, Caleb's got the ball and he passes it, and Brady shoots it and it goes in, and I look at the score. Okay, they did put 3 points up. The other team goes down and they shoot the ball and miss it, and I look at the score again. It didn't go in, Roy. Okay, we would come down and we'd shoot the ball, and I'd look at the score again. It doesn't count unless it goes in. So it's a little different the way I watched the games this year. But for me, I would like some ideas that I would try to give you before your last lecture as a college student, because there's going to be many days in front of you that you're going to enjoy so much. And a lot of the reasons you're going to enjoy it is because of the foundation that you got here at the University of North Carolina. I was in a meeting one time with several of my bosses, very, very high up individuals. And they could have thrown me out because at one point I said, "This is not your frickin' school. By God, it's my school." But I lived to see another day. But one of the things I'd like to tell you is don't say, "I wish I had done this," or "I wish I had done that." Think about it and go ahead and do it. I had a player one time named Jared Hass. Played for us at the University of Kansas, came with me here and was an assistant here for a while as a head coach at Stanford now. I called him one summer, and I said, he was at home, I was in Lawrence, Kansas. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I get up at 8, eat, and then take off, and I go and I run. And I run for 40 minutes really hard. And then the high school kids come in, and we go through stretching exercise with them and go through a weight workout, and I go through that with the kids. And then we do a shooting workout with them, and I go through the whole thing with them, encourage them, but I get a lot of shots up myself. And then we break into stations, and we have drills for an hour. And then we play 5-on-5, and I'm trying to coach them, encourage them to think the game. And then we stop for lunch. And after lunch, I go lift myself and really get in a hard workout. And then we go back and we have another shooting period. And then we play 5-on-5, and I play. And then we break and the kids go home, the camp's over with, and then former players and current players come and we play at night for 2 hours. And then I stay there and shoot for another hour to toss back in my seat myself. And I said, "How often do you do that?" 5 days a week, Coach. And I said, "Really?" He said, "I never want to get to school next fall and say, I wish I had done this." And that stuck with me forever because he was doing everything he could possibly do. And I've always thought that's a great thing. You don't want to say, "I wish I had done this." I've got a lot of sayings that I copy from people, and some of them I make up myself, and they're not very good usually, but I like them, so it's okay. I tell my team all the time because I've got to win games or I'm going to be fired, period, okay? But I've also got to help them reach their own individual dreams and goals. In today's world, every one of my players, every one of our players, everyone right now, they think they're going to be a pro player. They see that some idiot on TV that just missed a layup is going to make $47 million next year. Okay, so everybody wants to be that idiot to miss a layup, okay? But my goal, we have to win, but we have to make sure that we help them reach their own individual dreams and goals as well. So one of the things I do is I tell them, if our team wins, the players get the awards and rewards. And that's corny as all get out, but they understand what I'm talking about. I've copied some things, and I talk a lot, read a lot, talk to people with their motivational things. And one of them you've heard, Rome was not built in a day. And I added something to that. And it's what I would encourage you to do. Rome was not built in a day, but it was worked on every day. When Joel James came here in 2013, I think, as a freshman, I told him, I said, "You are a project, but you've got a great chance." And I told him Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was worked on every day. And he said, "Wow." Joel's easy to coach. He was good for me. All right. You know what it is you don't have to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth or anything. you have to be willing to do some work. You have to be willing to try some things. You have to be willing to look and see where you may want to go. I came here, my mother had 10 brothers and sisters, my father had 13. When we had family reunions, there were hundreds of cousins. I was the first Williams to ever go to college. My mother quit school in the 10th grade and went to work in a cotton mill in Rutherfordton, North Carolina. My father quit school in the 6th grade and went to work in a lumber mill. Education was never talked about in my family, never. The only thing that was really good when you're in the 1st grade, 2nd grade, they would give you a satisfactory or a U was unsatisfactory. And I made sure I never got any of those U's. But then all of a sudden in the 3rd grade, my 3rd grade teacher, in those days a big thing on TV was American Bandstand. And they had the top 10 songs every week. My sister was 4 years older, and she loved to watch that every afternoon when we got home from school. But my teacher in the 3rd grade, she put something up on the board. It was the top 10 students of the 6-week grading period. My name was not on there. And it was the first time in my life I understood what competition was all about. The next 5 grading periods, my frickin' name was the top of the list, okay? And that made my mother so proud that when I'd bring my report card home, because then it was A's, B's, C's, that kind of thing, and she really liked seeing those A's on my report card. My sister didn't give her a lot of those A's, must have been what it was. But you don't have to be born with a silver spoon, but you do have to be born with a desire. And right now, that's the biggest thing I can tell you. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the people beside you have given you so much. Now it's your responsibility to do something with it. These are the things that I want you to think about, and it's things that I've learned over 48 years of coaching. 48 years. And this summer on July 28th, Wicked Wanda and I will enjoy our 49th anniversary. I didn't think she would clap. But what I would like to say is things that I've learned that hopefully one thing that I tell you will be good for you. And if it is, then it's going to be a successful night for me. If there's one thing. For me, one of the things that I said at graduation when I spoke at commencement, now what you going to do? And it reminded me of a story when I was coaching at Kansas. We had a player on our team named Alonzo Jameson. And he was tough as he could be. He was 6'3", almost 6'4", about 250. And he looked like a middle linebacker, and he was so quick, it was ridiculous. And if I were to pick one player I've ever coached to put in the middle of a ring against anybody, it would be Zoe. But we're playing Oklahoma. And you know how guys in basketball, 2 guys will end up grabbing the ball, and, you know, the referee calls a jump, and they don't want to, you know, it's a macho thing. God almighty, it's stupid, but it's a macho thing. You know, one guy doesn't want to let it go, so both of them are sort of pulling for the ball. Well, that's what was happening with Alonzo and the player from Oklahoma. But Alonzo was too big, too strong, and too confident, because he just jerked it away, and the guy held on to the ball, and he bounced about 3 times on the floor. Now, he's got his macho kind of thing he's got to protect, so what does he do? He runs right, jumps right up, runs right up to Alonzo's face, like this microphone. And Alonzo was closer than that rail to me. I'm standing on the sideline. And Alonzo looked at him and said, "Now what you going to do?" And that youngster got out of Alonzo's face so fast because one of those very confident, "Now what you going to do?" And so that's what people can ask you right now. Now what you going to do? And I think that's something that I think you will do very, very well. Anson Dorrance coaches our women's soccer team. I've told him and I've told everybody, I think he's the best coach I've ever known in any sport in my entire life. He talks to his players, and I've heard it and I've copied things from good people. I'm not very innovative, but I do copy good things. He wants his players to perform on a continuous upward movement, a continuous ascension, ending as you still go up. Upward ascension of being the best that you can possibly be. And they talk about that continuous ascension of their talent before they leave the court every day or the field every day. When I was coaching at North Carolina, I told them, don't leave this court, don't leave the wooden court and hit that tunnel where the concrete is. Don't take that step unless you've done something to make yourself better that day. If you haven't improved yourself, turn back around and do something to improve yourself. And Coach Dorrance saying that to those girls, he's only won 22 national championships. And he's got all the rest of us admiring everything he does. The players for us and my children have heard me talk about certain layers of people, of your friends. You guys aren't old enough. I wasn't old enough, but my father and my uncles did. They were in World War II. And I always talk about having foxhole buddies, people that you can trust, people that are with you. And I want to have some foxhole buddies my whole life, and I have. And there's 3 grades of people with me. When you're living your life, there's one layer of friends, and they're friends. There's nothing wrong with their friends. But they're going to be with you completely. Never. But they're going to be friends, okay? But they're not going to be with you, okay? There's a second layer of people that are friends. They're going to be with you if you do what they want you to do. And that's the only time they're really all in. And then you have a third layer of friends who are with you completely. And make sure that you know who those are. This weekend we go on a golf trip. We have 8 guys, 8 wives. We've done it for 17 of the last 19 years. Those are my foxhole buddies. That's the best foxhole buddy I've ever had. But I've got some of those. In 2000, I chose not to come back to North Carolina. I stayed at Kansas the first time they asked me because I'd told one of my players I would be there for his entire career. Duke had told him that if you go to Kansas, you're not going to have Roy Williams as your coach. He's going to leave you and go to North Carolina. I promised Nick Collison that I would be here, would be there for his entire career. And so I said no to North Carolina. I had some really good friends that didn't speak to me for 3 years. But I had some foxhole buddies from North Carolina that stuck with me. 3 years later, Nick Collison had graduated. I had a new AD and a new chancellor. And Coach Smith asked me to come back again, said, we wanted you the last time, we need you this time. I made the decision to come back. And those same Kansas people that love me, my picture ended up being over the commode in the barbershop downtown. But I had some Kansas people that stuck with me. Those were my foxhole buddies. And when we go this weekend for the golf trip, there's 1, 2, 3 of them are Kansas people, and 4 of the other, the 7 of us, 8 counting me, 3 of them are Kansas people, 4 of them are North Carolina people. But they're my foxhole buddies. So that's who you want to know. You know which one of your friends who are with you regardless. And if you have some, appreciate them. Try to see if you can get a couple more. All right? But I've got 7 or 8 that I trust with my life and my family. Life is not counted by the number of breaths you take, but by the moments that take your breath away. And in my life, gosh, oh Moses, I've had so many times that have taken my breath away. We did get lucky and we won 3 national championships, and that took my breath away. We won some conference tournaments. We won some big-time games that took my breath away because it meant something to me. Children, seeing them do some things takes your breath away. We lost in the Big 8 conference tournament to Iowa State. The last year it was the Big 8 before it went to the Big 12. And I got Wanda, and we jumped in the car and drove to Emporia, Kansas, and watched our son Scott win the state high school basketball championship. And we have a picture. It's one of my favorite pictures. It's of me and Wanda and Scott and Kimberly. And there's something wrong with the lighting because my eyes are really red and, it looks like I've been crying. And those kind of things, but it was just bad lighting, okay? But it took my breath away. And Kimberly was a dancer here at North Carolina for 2 years. Tore her knee up and the whole bit, but she was really good. I loved to watch her dance as much as I enjoyed watching Scott play basketball. And I mean that from the bottom of my soul. In fact, I make Scott mad all the time. I tell him I wish he had taken dance, because Kimberly had a hell of a lot quicker feet than he did. So, and then the last one that really takes your breath away, when you have grandchildren. I have a 12-year-old grandson, 10-year-old grandson, 4-year-old grandson, and almost a 3-year-old granddaughter. Finally had a little girl. And I'm telling you what, I'll never forget the night I jumped in the car and drove from here to Charlotte for our son Scott's firstborn. I didn't know the sex. I didn't want to know. I wanted to be surprised. And they didn't either. So Scott comes out and says, "Come on in." And so we go in, and Katie's mom and dad, I held the door for them, and they went in, and then Wanda went in. And then I took a step in, and Katie said, "Step over here and say hello to your grandson." And I turned around. I had to step outside. It took my breath away. And that's what you want to have in life, care enough to have some of those moments. And now, the little girl, I say, "Pop needs a hug." And she may come running and hug me. Or she may play tricks and just stand behind somebody else and play tricks with me, knowing that she's got me wrapped around my finger. So another one of the things I do when I talk to people, and particularly young people, I'll talk to you a second about your teachers. Let's go high school first, and then you can put your own thing to it. Remember the toughest teacher you had in high school. Everybody's probably got one person that you'll think about. All right, now think about the best teacher you ever had. Because 2/3 of you are going to say the same person. And I've never been afraid of trying to be tough with my guys, because it's not that I have to be friendly with them. I've got to try to help them be the best they can possibly be. And one of the things that I say, and I tell you what, let's just have some fun. How many of you had, raise your hand if it was the same person? I believe that. And that's the way I tried to coach, is I tried to be tough on them. I mean, Mrs. Baldwin had 4 X's marked on the floor. And that's where the 4 legs of your chair was supposed to be. And you did not move those chairs. The clock was behind me. It took me 6 weeks before I was strong enough to turn around and check the time, because I was afraid of that woman. Persistence prevails when all else fails. I decided I wanted to be a coach after my 9th grade year in high school. I wanted to be somebody that could be like my high school coach. My mother and father, it was a fairly tough childhood. There's some stories. It wasn't great, but it was okay. I was happy because I had my mom, and she was the angel of the world. But my high school basketball coach was the most positive male figure in my life. My dad was alcoholic, was married 5 times. My mom was his first. So it's the same thing I tell you, you don't have to have that silver spoon. But my mom was the angel of the world. So I was good. I was good. Nothing else mattered. But in the 9th grade, my high school basketball coach started talking to my buddies about me and saying things about me. And it was the first person in my life that had ever said good things. The first person I could ever remember that made me feel good, that gave me confidence, made me feel like I could do some things. And that summer after my 9th grade year, I wanted to be a high school coach, and I never changed, because I wanted to make somebody feel like my high school coach had made me feel. And I knew that I wasn't the only one that he had done that with. And so it's been good. He's 82 years old. I talked to him last night. He used to drive down here for the games from Asheville, 236 miles, I think it was, and then turn around and get in the car and drive back. And he didn't miss any games. But 82, he didn't come to any games. He came to 1 game this year, is that right? I can't remember. I don't think he came. See, I tell you, I was in the fans. I can't remember anything about the games this time. But your attitude is going to have one thing to do, and I had one thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure I outworked everybody. Nobody was going to outwork me. And again, ninth grade summer's when I decided I wanted to be a coach. Do your best, and that means your best, not 90%. I don't believe in 110. That's garbage. There's only 100%, okay? But you're not going to get 95% from me. Zion Williamson, that guy that went to Duke, okay? I saw him play more than any other head coach. Any other head coach. I went and sat down in front of him more than any other head coach. That made me feel like I'd done everything I could do. And in fact, it was crazy. Coach Davis and I left the house on Thursday night. We were the last school in. We got in the car, and I said, Hubert, what do you think? He said, I think we're going to get him. I said, I do too. And then Saturday's when he decided he was going in and made the announcement he was going to Duke. And I could live with that because I'd done everything I could possibly do. But I tried to outwork everybody. And it's okay to do that. I remember Joe Wolf was a big-time player for us here. He calls his mom. His mom calls me. She said, I'm so proud of Joe. See, they bringing a siren here because I'm telling this story about Joe Wolf. Mom says, I am so proud of Joe academically. He's really doing a great job. He's telling me he goes to the library every night. I almost swallowed the phone. It was a bar down on the end of Franklin on the other end called the library. It's where Chipotle is now. It was a bar called the library. My boy Joe told his mom, okay? The reason I bring that in is because I worked as hard as I could to make Joe Wolf a better player too, and we got him. But I gave everything I had for Zion, and it didn't work out. But we did beat him 2 out of 3. That's good. And we had the last shot, Kobe White, from about 12, 13 feet. If it'd gone in, we'd have beat their butts 3 out of 3. I'd have gotten an airplane to fly over Durham then. Whatever your task is, whatever your task, whatever your job is, big or small, do it to the best of your ability. That counts in your work, counts in basketball. If I tell somebody to go across the lane and set a screen for the big guy to come across, and Marcus Page has got the ball and he throws it to Bryce, and Bryce turns and lays it up. Marcus gets an assist, Bryce gets a basket, and nobody knows who has set that screen. But I know, and that player knows. Regardless of what you think your job is, level, if you think it's really important, just barely important, do it to the best of your ability. If you do that every day, somebody's going to notice, and it may be that guy or girl that has a lot to do with how much you move on in your life. Do it to the best of your ability. When I was in school here, I loved soul music. All right, I was big. Otis Redding, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, is my favorite song of all time. And I loved watching the Temptations. And then I took a break from music for 15 or 20 years, or ever how long it was. I didn't like hard rock, the electric stuff. I didn't like rap. And then all of a sudden, I started listening to country music. So in my car, I can have Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On, that I hear on the way to the game, okay? Or I can hear some country guy. Right now, I love Luke Bryan's, one of his quotes, one of his songs says, find something you love and call it work. That's what Roy Williams did. I found something I loved, and people called it work, and people even paid me to do it, okay? He says something about, it's the song By Dirt or something. He talks about getting down on your knees when you find the right one. There's something good you can find out when you listen to other things. And for me, it was find something you love and call it work. Again, the idea of the last lecture, it's me or you, I don't know. But as I told you, I hope it's not my last. How do I reach you to get you to do your best? Because that's all you ask. That's all I ask for my team ever. Again, I coached for 48 years. 48 years. In the first year, we won 2 games as a high school coach. 2 games. We beat the same team both times. So I don't know how that coach is doing right now, but I've had a pretty good run. My idea is just to try to help you, not just say what I did. It worked for me. In coaching this year, I missed it immensely. I really did. I used to use the word desperately, but I think that's a little bit overly dramatic. I loved being in that locker room. I loved watching practice. I loved being on the bus. I loved trying to get kids, and they're still kids. When you're 71 years old, everybody I'm looking at out here is a kid. I love trying to get them to make sacrifices for the common goal, to make sacrifices for our team. That's the part I miss. I don't necessarily miss the games nearly as much as the association, the relationships. When I get notes on Father's Day from former players and saying, just wanted to make sure I said Happy Father's Day to my second father, that's about as good as it gets. On Easter, last 4 days ago, I guess, whatever, 3 days, I love it to get texts from the parents of one of my players. That's what I miss, is how close you come to the players that you coach. My high school coach, who was really important, as I said, he told me one time, he said, when you coach someone 30 years later, you still see something you gave him. It's your job to make sure it's something you gave him positive. But you can still see that. I have guys who have coached in the NBA. I have guys who played in the NBA. One of my former players is the CEO of Cisco right now. And every one of those guys tell me that something that I did, that we did together, is still very important to them. But the reason I stopped, like I said, is just that I didn't think I was doing it as good anymore. But I was proud of the way I did it. I did it on my terms. I did it as soon as I could to make sure that Hubert could get a good start. I pushed for him very hard, and I think it was, needless to say, the right decision. Okay, yes. And it's nothing to do with the way Mike did it. He did it his way. That's okay. But Roy Williams did it my way. Okay, that's the way it is. I was just, I know that's going to come out and piss somebody in Durham off. So that's okay. That doesn't bother me, I can assure you. But I did it my way from start to finish. And that's the way I hope that you feel the way you've done so far. And from this moment on, is to do it your way. And to do it and be true to yourself. And give everything you possibly can. There's nothing better than having a family. And I was lucky because I had the best family you could possibly have. And I never went to work a single day in my life. I went and spent time with my second family. And Jesus, it can't get any better than that. So my hope and dream would be that you would find something that you can do from start to finish. Do it your way and that you loved. Like Luke Bryan says, find something you love and call it work. 8 years as an assistant coach, I had 2 practices a day, every day. My first year here, I came back as an assistant. I made $2,700 for the year. I sold calendars. I did. I was the best daggum calendar salesman you've ever seen. In fact, the first year I drove 9,000 miles, sold 10,500 calendars, made $2,400. 8 years later, instead of driving 9,000 miles, I only drove 5. Instead of selling 10,500 calendars, I sold 55,000. Instead of making $2,400, I made $30,000. I was the best daggum calendar salesman you've ever seen. In 8 years that I coached both teams, JV team every day and the varsity practice too, and then Eddie Fogler left and went to Wichita State, and I moved up one notch and started getting paid. And that was pretty neat. I turned down some jobs that people wanted me to leave here and go to be a head coach, but I turned it down because I wanted the right situation. George Mason University offered me the head coaching position, and it sounded pretty good. I remember going into a meeting. There were 10 people, I think, in the interview, and they said, everybody's got a question they want to ask you. And I said, okay, let's try this first. Why don't you let me tell you what I would do if I were your head coach, and then let's see if that answers any of the questions. And at the end of an hour and a half, actually an hour and 18 minutes, the athletic director looked around and said, does anybody have any questions? Not a single one of those 10 people had a question. So they offered me the job. And I'm living in Heritage Hills on 404 Yorktown Road, Chapel Hill. And the AD was coming down on Saturday morning to bring the contract, and this was his terminology, to dot the I's and cross the T's. I got up at 5 o'clock and called him and said, don't come, because I hadn't been able to sleep for 2 nights. And nobody in the world would have thought, but I said, no, I'm not going to do this. I called Coach Smith and said, got some good news or bad news, which way you look at it. And he said, what's that? I said, Coach, I called him and told him to not come. That's not the right job. He told me, he said, 2 years ago you turned down Mississippi State. Even with the calendars, you had gotten your pay up to $38,000. Mississippi State offered you $158,000 and 2 cars, and you said no. So it doesn't surprise me that you're doing this. You've always been the most patient. Just keep doing that, and before you know it, the job that's right for you will be staring you right in the face and have your name written all over it. So it's sort of crazy. That was in May, and in July of that year, so 2 months later, I was named the head coach at the University of Kansas. A little bit better than George Mason. George Mason's okay. But I did it my way. And I think that's what I would like you guys to do here, is this last part of your college career. Think about what you've done. Think about where you want to go. Do it your way, the way that you're comfortable with. Take some advice. Take some experienced advice. Listen to the people that love you. Listen to the foxhole buddies. Listen to your family. I will tell you, a media person sent me a gift after I announced my retirement on April Fool's Day, okay, 1 year and 19 days ago. Sent me 3 dozen golf balls. And I like to play golf, my family, my team, and I like teeing it up with my buddies. But sent me these golf balls and opened them up and looked at them. I like to play Titleist, and I like to play Titleist 1, 2, 3, or 4. I don't like to play Titleist 5, 6, 7, 8. And I don't have any idea why. Just when I look down, I like to see 1, 2, 3, or 4 because they're lower numbers. That's what I want to score. I don't want to make an 8, so I don't want to play those. But I looked in these balls, and they either had a 9 or a 3 or 2 zeros. And so I said, I'm going to call. The person that brought it to me knew the story, but I said, I'm going to call and say, we won 903 games, not 9,003, because a 9 and 00 and 3. And the guy that handed it to me said, no, he told me why. 9 years, 9 Final Fours, 3 national championships, and 00 regrets. And I thought that was pretty damn good. Okay. And I thanked him for it and took one and gave a sleeve of each one of those to my foxhole buddies. 9 Final Fours, 3 national championships, and 00 regrets. And the last thing I would like to say is that right to start, I emphasized, you don't have to be born anyway. You're in charge. You're in charge with what you do. Wanda and I have been very supportive of the Carolina Covenant because I wish we'd have had that when I came to school here. Those guys right there can be just as good as Roy Williams' son and daughter. And that's what I want you to understand. You're in charge. Nobody else is in charge. You're in charge. And so the last thing, 2 things. I had a great teacher one time as an English teacher. I hated English. Wanda ended up being an English teacher. Yeah. She would give me a C on most of my papers like all my English teachers did. But I had an English teacher, I asked the teacher, I said, how long is this paper supposed to be? She said, well, I don't want to give it a length or number of pages. I said, just tell me how long you want the paper. And she's leaned back a little bit. This was a country teacher up in the mountains of North Carolina. And she said, Roy, it's like the length of a young lady's skirt. I had no idea what crap she was talking about, okay? And you may know this. The length of a young lady's skirt, long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to keep it interesting. And that was a teacher in my 7th or 8th grade, Mrs. Burgess. And I remember mentioning that to Mrs. Ponder, who taught my English class for 4 straight years. And before I could even get it out, she gave me the quote. So some English professor at some college somewhere got people to use that. But I want you to take it all in and make one more choice. They're givers and takers. John Kennedy spoke here at graduation. President Kennedy, do not ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And I've always talked about givers and takers. I want you guys to be givers. The more you give, the more you receive. I believe that from the bottom of my soul. And the last thing is my favorite saying. If Sean May were sitting out there, if Jackie Manuel were sitting out there, they would tell you just like that what that saying is. Be led by your dreams, not pushed by your problems. Be led by your dreams, not pushed by your problems. If you can do that, you'll be satisfied, you'll be happy. And if that's the only thing you take from this, it's a little more important than the length of the paper for your English teacher. But if you just be led by your dreams and not pushed by your problems, you'll be satisfied at the end. And hopefully, you can have somewhere as good a, quote, career as I had with mine. It was the greatest profession there ever was for Roy Williams. It may not be for anybody else, but try to find something that you love. And if you can love it half as much as I loved coaching basketball at the University of North Carolina, you're a lucky person. Thank you very much.